Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last weekend of Culturama. And we have just a few more people, but some of the best people I know. And today we have two of those people. We have Tom Thomas and Shannon, both of whom are publishers. Shannon, you transitioned now from magazine publishing to book publishing.
Yeah, I started, I ran an online lit mag and then started publishing chapbooks mostly in 2017.
Mm-hmm. And Thomas, you have both a magazine and a book publisher. You've got Redshift and Arroyo Seco.
Yeah, I took the year off of Redshift this year, so let's see what happens next year.
Okay, all right. So please take it away. Yeah, I think you can ask any questions you want of them, but we're doing mostly small press publishing today. And local publishers. And if you came to Mark's given section, he said this is like some of the best publishing you can do. So absolutely, please take it away, Tom and Shannon. Oh, there we
go. You can ask about lit mag submission too. Lit mag submission is fine to ask about too. We both have a lot of experience with that. So and also writing questions too.
Oh, that's Shannon's forte.
No.
I have a question about ordering your manuscript. Do different publishers have different policies about, like, say you're doing a poetry chapbook? Do they have preferences or rules about how your poems are ordered, if the author does the ordering, if the publisher does the ordering? Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I've done it a lot of different ways with my press. I don't have too many experiences myself. I mean, I've published 2 chapbooks. I did the ordering both times. I know that there's a lot of literature out there actually on it. Like you can read in like Electric Lit and Lit Hub and things like that. And I believe there's actually a whole book of essays. Suzanne was going to give me the title of it, that it popped into one of her carts on one of those shopping book. I think probably Amazon. But anyway, so there's theories about all of it. I think for the most part, publishers are used to the manuscript being ordered by the poet themselves, and they get the complete manuscript. For the most part, I think that's something that happens, yeah.
Also, if you're doing a mixed genre collection, like poetry and flash, or poetry and flash memoir, or short fiction, is it more advantageous to order things so that they create an arc, or to have all the flash together and all the poetry together, or intersperse it? Or do you know?
Thomas, have you had somebody do mixed for Arroyo Seco hybrid stuff? Have you had anybody do hybrid yet?
Not really. I had one person that did haiku and photographs, but no.
I mean, I think it's really going to depend on the publisher. So you would find a publisher who is open to hybrid and kind of see what their priorities are. I feel like your average consumer of poetry, right? They're gonna pick up your book anyway. They're less likely to read it cover to cover. And they're gonna, go in your table of contents, read the first and last poem or piece, and then go in the table of contents and see which one appeals to them. I don't think too many people really approach reading, more creative works in a linear fashion. But I guess I'm sure some do. So I really think that is really going to depend on the publisher. I've only seen one hybrid. I've only personally read one hybrid book. It was Eric Morago's What We Ache For, and he put there's the flash pieces or the short stories in the middle, and he framed it with poems.
Okay,
that's my limited experience there. But that is, I think, is really going to depend on the publisher. So with small press, as you already know, Rooney, you're going to communicate with them and see what they're like. Me, my priority is always going to be creativity. So I'm always looking for that arc personally, whether or not I believe that the reader is going to read cover to cover. So that's
And
what I'm still going for, is that arc.
yeah, I know you and I have talked about that. Thomas, do you have a preference?
The hybrid thing, I don't really know that much about, but you know, you asked about you know, I think you wonder about how the author gets their books to sell, or what? Were you questioning that?
Just no, like when you're handing in a manuscript, how, like, do you want a complete table of contents? You want it ordered?
You know, I don't really need a table of contents. I do like to know the order that they prefer. Like Shannon's really good at finding how that flows. I often take what the poet gives me, and you know, but I mean, with my own books, I kind of random, or I often put them in according to how when I wrote it, you know. So even though there's no real pattern there, since I, you know, but sometimes there is a little bit.
John, can I ask you a question?
Please.
If the content of your collection that you put together is sort of memoir-ish, would chronological order as far as a memoir goes make the most sense, as far as if you're going for some sort of linear story?
Yeah, if you're going for a linear story, often, but I have read some non-linear memoir lately, especially done with Flash. And what the effect was, it helps us to understand, first of all, that most of our see our lives is disjointed. Right. I certainly don't see a linear narrative in my life. Maybe several, right? But like, things come back, and sometimes I'm a 50-year-old man, and sometimes I'm a 12-year-old boy, right, in my own life. And it really, that has been an interesting thing, interesting phenomenon lately. There was just one I read from Red Hand Press, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was about a woman whose brother committed suicide, and of course, there's never any answers to what this is, and that's the thing that survivors are left with, that there's no real answer. So she's just taking a look at different parts of her life and their life together, and it's a really interesting effect. But yeah, I mean, normally memoirs are sort of chronological.
Yeah, I've read a lot of memoirs, and they mostly tend to be fairly chronological. I think one of the big exceptions was Bob Dylan's. It popped around back and forth a lot, and it seemed a little disjointed, but I enjoyed each section. You know, at least he stayed within the same story within a chapter.
You know, I would expect Bob Dylan's to be disjointed, right? The way that person has lived.
Yeah, well, he's not going to follow the rules.
No, but I'm sure it was beautiful.
Expected. I read Keith Richards' memoir, and it tended to be linear. And it was it's like, oh, this guy's smarter than I thought he was. I mean, you don't realize, and he was so quiet about it. So that's one thing good about reading the memoirs, is finding out who these people are.
Just an aside, I work with the deaf, and we heard somebody made reference to the weirdness of Dylan's voice in a movie, and they asked me to explain what Dylan's voice was. Holy hell. What's that? Okay. What other questions do we have for Shannon and Thomas?
I have a question. I'm new to this. This may seem like a silly question, but what's the difference between a short story and a flash fiction? Are they the same?
John's probably best suited to answer that, but my understanding is flash is probably a page. I mean, not too much more than that. Short stories, what, about 4,000 words, probably. Some of them can get a little longer, but John probably is best suited to answer that question.
In England, it's defined as being fewer than 500 words. In America, it's usually fewer than 1,000. But the idea behind it is you are able to write in a way that you can't in a longer story, because the longer story won't sustain whatever it is you have to say. So if you've got, you know, Stephanie does magical realism, and she's able to sustain that. But sometimes you just want that little piece, and that's what the Flash is. Sometimes you don't want to have a story, and so you can get away with that in Flash. You just want to say something about the way life is in the 21st century.
You can think of a flash fiction almost like a photograph for one thing, and also just a moment in time, a quick moment in time too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
Shannon and Thomas, I imagine you've answered this question for other folks, but I don't know the answer. So I'm really curious how both of you got interested in publishing in the first place.
Well, Thomas and I, our journeys kind of have happened alongside of each other, I think. I think in a lot of ways. I have an MFA, so I was interested in creative writing. I wasn't interested in poetry. Tony Barnstone got me interested in poetry. I was, just kind of probably doing flashy, memoir, hybrid type stuff prior to that. But anyway, I had this poem I'd written that I really, really liked. I hope you guys are all your own favorite poets. I mean, you should be. So like, I had this poem and it kept getting rejected, and I was like, dang. And one day it won an award and I was like, see, I knew it. And that was the energy that I wanted to publish. I said, this is the energy I want to celebrate. I want the poems that the poet is like, yes, I know it, and even though maybe more traditional magazines hadn't taken it, or, that they just knew that this was a poem that was good and they believed in it. And that was the energy I sort of just took. I said, I'm going to make my own magazine. So I started Carnival in 2011. My son was 9 months old, my first son. And, it was I had graduated from the MFA in 2008, and it was just, I didn't write for a year. So it was kind of my way of staying connected to the creative community. And I met John through Tony. And because of John and all his wonderful students who are now professionals and professors themselves, all those ones, I got the privilege of publishing them in Carnival when they were just starting out, when they were John's students at Mount Sac. And Thomas was one of them. He was related to Mount Sac. That's how I met Thomas. So, and then Thomas, you became a publisher shortly after that, actually.
I think just a couple of years later. What's interesting is I think around Carnival actually published my first chapbook. It was a digital one. And I think I showed a poem to Shannon and Suzanne, and she was talking about doing erotic poetry, and it was semi-erotic. So she said, oh, I'd like to publish, that separately as a chapbook. So I got that published, and then another book published at the same time. Then I started getting published in book form, not just in chapbooks. And it's like, once you've made something, been a little successful, you want to see other people do it. And one of the things after going to readings, I see a lot of people who read poems, and it's like they've got poems, but they don't really feel like they're a poet. And then especially women, notice. So that was my goal. I wanted to actually publish, there were like 4 women I'd kind of gathered in my mind. Shannon was included in that group. And I wanted to publish, but I have a different history education wise. I barely made it out of high school, and school and I didn't get along very well. But so I was very insecure about it. And I asked Shannon, it's like, you think I should do this? And she goes, definitely, yes, definitely. And I'm going, okay, I believe you believe in me. So I started. And I just started publishing chapbooks, so just little staple and fold ones first, and then got on to, it wasn't Amazon's publishing, but it was the group that they owned at first. So I ended up publishing them through Amazon. And one reason why I'm an invite-only publisher is that I want to know the person ahead of time. So, I wasn't really very aggressive about getting published, and I'm surprised that I think this last year, I think I'll have published 9 books this year, John, and I wasn't even trying at all. And partly is your fault. because I was people, I had a few people that they would send me people that they thought needed to be published. John Branningham, Zach Laughlin, Lloyd, and Donna Hilbert, and they've sent me people to publish. So my goal was, not exclusively women, but I wanted to get a good, grouping of women. And at first it was like mostly guys. That's frustrated me. We're a little more aggressive, I think. I don't know.
Can we talk about that? Maybe ways in encouraging people who feel discouraged. How can we as people in the writing community do that?
That's one reason I did publish. I've got a book. I'm a poet, and I think that was one reason I did that. And the chapbooks were easier. A lot of people can throw together, 15, 20 book poems or something, maybe, more or less. I mean, that's how I got Shannon published a chapbook for me, That's my wife.
Shannon, do you have any ideas for that?
Yeah, it's a really complicated, we could probably do a whole session on that. I'm similar too. I really did want to publish women. I love men, don't get me wrong, please, come on. I think that's evident. So, but I did. I feel like some women, I feel like if you really do want to publish women, you have to literally reach in and grab them and pull them out, and say, hey, I see you. Why that is, I mean, I think that obviously, women are primarily, caretakers of the young ones and things like that. So they get busy and they don't think about themselves too much. I'm not saying men don't take care of children or that they only think about themselves. Obviously, that's not the case. So insecurity, imposter syndrome, I think rates of that are higher among women. That's a huge cultural and societal thing. Yeah, as Evernie said, men are willing to step up and ask for what women bulk at. So yeah, I mean, men are I think are more conditioned to go for the things that they want. But a lot of the women that I've worked with, they need a lot of care. They need a lot of support. They need to be told often, that they're good, that someone needs their work, that, they have a strong voice, that they deserve, to make a book. And it takes a lot of care. It does. And that's not always something that we have, like in our society, that's not a very valued thing. Like we don't offer care to people. So
I wonder if you can give me specifically advice, and other people will do it as well. How can I change? What can I do to help people to feel valued?
I think, well, John, you already do it. I can think of another number of women who can probably trace their a number of significant publications in their life back to you. But the things, I guess I can recognize the things that you do. I mean, you tell someone when you believe in their work. I mean, you tell them this is good, this affected me, this was strong. You following up is kind of important, and that's not easy to do because you don't want to stalk or harass someone, obviously. But just express your enthusiasm. Be open-hearted if you can. Enthusiasm. I know enthusiasm isn't cool. It's not a cool thing, but it does speak to people. Yeah, following up. Like, you have an event, for example, these workshops from Culturama, and you follow up and you say, hey, I noticed you haven't signed up. She's probably been busy. She probably hasn't, she forgot, she fell asleep on the couch, whatever, and, so following up, I think, is a huge thing. So if you have, the energy and the ability to do that, then definitely do that and be enthusiastic. Yeah, you already do it, John. I don't know what else you could do differently. I could maybe think about it, but yeah. I think this is a question we could all think about more,
You
enthusiasm and
are
fun.
really good at creating spaces where people can network with one another, especially women. I know that I have met a particular woman in this group who we've been talking, and hopefully we'll be collaborating. I met Shannon kind of through this sphere, and Thomas and Stephanie and Carrie. So yeah, I think you foster a sense of community, which is important. And then you, like with our Thursday group, you sort of started the group and then handed it off, and we're a self-sustaining workshop group. So I think that's important as far as empowerment goes. Like, you're not relying on a charismatic leader to, oh, please tell me what's wrong with my poem. Like, now we're just holding each other up, which is a different experience, and ostensibly a more empowering one. So I think that's important.
Good. Well, what I'm getting at here, I think that the small presses are a really great place to achieve that goal, right? And would you agree with that? Would you say it's easier for people who are starting out or unwilling to enter the big dark place of big publishers to work with? Who would you advise work with small presses like you?
Well, Thomas and I are both open and able to adapt our styles. It took me 2 years. I just published a woman. It took 2 years of convincing her and taking a lot of care with her manuscript. So I can't really speak to the big publishers. I don't have any experience with the bigger publishers and the agents and anything like that. So I really can't say, but definitely I know there obviously are small press publishers out there wanting to give their platform or lend the platform to women, women that are insecure, or women that do need support. We're out there. Thomas and I both, we're able to adapt how we approach, we're able to adapt our approach for different types of poets.
Do you work with women who submit?
I do not know. Aruni does, I think.
Really, what could you just, in case people don't have that information, could you tell us what that is?
Women Who Submit is a group I found out about at a reading that was featuring authors who belong to the group. It's a free organization for women to encourage them to submit their work to all levels of journals. They do a once a month meeting where it's like a submission party, where you goal set together, you pick magazines that are your target as to where you want your work published. And they put out 2 anthologies. I'm in both of them. And they, the anthologies are to highlight work that you've submitted to another publication, and then they republish it all in one anthology. And this latest anthology has drama in it. It has poetry, memoir, flash fiction, creative nonfiction. And it's for women and non-binary writers. And it's a great way to have community with people who have your same anxieties about putting your work out there. Every month they have a rejection brag where you can say like, oh, I was turned down again for such and such a fellowship, or, I didn't win the Jack Grapes Poetry Prize. And it's funny, but it's empowering because at least you're putting your work out there, and it has a very nothing ventured, nothing gained vibe to it. I can find, they have a Facebook group, and so you can post. They also have like a good news newsletter. So if you have gotten published, you can submit a form, and they send it out to all the members of Women Who Submit in the local chapter, and you can say like, hey, I got a poem into blah blah. Then periodically they have a sprint, like a submission sprint, where it's all top, like we're all going to submit to top tier magazines. So everybody send a story to the Paris Review or whatever. And it's hard to motivate yourself and have that stamina to keep putting yourself out there. And you're like this one sad little person in a rowboat being inundated with rejection letters. But if you're in a slightly bigger rowboat with a bunch of other people, it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So I would strongly encourage women to join a local chapter of Women Who Submit. You can participate as little or as much as you want, but it's a very supportive space. And some of the ladies in the chapter I belong to have had, their second and third novels out. Actually, John, I wanted to talk to you about this, to do like some sort of workshop about writing reviews so that you can review one another's work to generate buzz. I'll post a link in the chat.
I did that last year. It's in the Cultural Element community page, but I'd be happy to do it again.
Did Carrie have a question?
Yeah, Carrie.
Yeah, I have a chapbook that's ready to go, and I'd like to submit it with a small press. And so I just wanted to know kind of what your suggestions, guidance would be for me.
A lot, I mean, I don't know. A lot of small presses are invite only. There are plenty though that are not. You've probably already seen that a lot of them, the way to get in is through a contest. So you're probably already doing this, but definitely research the ones that sound interesting to you, that share an aesthetic or a vision that you feel aligns with your work or this particular book that you have. But research. Small presses are probably our Achilles heel. And I hear this is an Achilles heel for even the big four, is promotion. So you're going to come to a space where you might feel pressure to promote your own work. You're going to feel like the press doesn't maybe promote it enough. And I'm not going to lie, this is a tricky thing. I don't even think Mark Givens has completely figured this one out. I think this baffles even him, and he's a guru by any standard. So that's going to be a thing. So if that's important to you, you might want to look and see how the press promotes, what they want from you. Some presses are ambitious and they will want from their poets. They want to see Twitter followers or, things like that. So very definitely research, and they need to feel right. Don't get yourself involved in anything that your gut, if you have any red flag whatsoever, don't get involved. So those are just research is my advice. You're probably already doing this. And what about you guys? What do you think?
I think one of my weaknesses is promotion, because I can get the manuscript together, but I'm not very good at putting it out there. I think another thing too is it's been really difficult since I don't get out anymore. I would have probably organized a reading for some of the books that I just recently published, but I haven't done that. And I usually don't do much more than that. Often it's the poet does it, which is one reason why sometimes if I think that the book really needs a lot more care as far as once it's out there, I'd rather somebody go to somebody else that maybe would help them better, to promote their book, etc. One thing I want you to be careful about is somebody that expects a lot more out of you to get the book even published. You don't want to have to spend any money, essentially.
Yeah, you really shouldn't spend money. I mean, there are hybrid presses. So if you decide that those hybrid presses, those the sort of almost guided self-publishing, if you decide one of those is for you, that is completely fine as well. But if you don't have money, don't spend money. You don't have to. You don't have to spend money. You can decide, your own finances. You can decide to work with a guided self-publisher and or hybrid press, and that's completely fine. But you don't have to spend money. You do not have to.
One press requires you to, have sold so many before they publish it. And I know somebody who did that, and they had to buy some of them themselves just to get it done. And it's nice. I mean, they have a lot of books in their hands, but they didn't necessarily sell that many up front.
So I'm gonna Daniel, we'll get to your question in a second. We also have questions from Connie and Richard, but I wanted to add something here. So when I do a reading, one of two things happens at the end of the reading. I say, buy my books, please. Now I'm done. You can buy them over there. That I do that so awkwardly and also it's kind of creepy. that nobody buys books, right? I might make 1 or 2 sales. However, when the curator of the reading says buy his book, they usually sell out. This is a long-winded way of saying that it's much easier to help someone else sell their book than it is to sell your own. And you can start working together in collaborative ways to do that, right? Like I think of the person who just doesn't like to read, doesn't like to go to readings, is nervous, is shy. Well, you got to help that person out, and maybe that person can return the favor. So, okay, so Daniel, I think Daniel did you have a question related directly to this?
To
Promotion?
promotion a little bit, yeah. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I feel a little bit offended, that men are considered to be like easy to get published, where women are not, and there's a specialty market there that's kind of like supporting. I have a really hard time believing in myself in the acknowledgement section of a book. Like all these people that are behind them. I can't find anybody to get behind me. And I saw Richard put a question in there. He doesn't even know what a chapbook is. I'm not even sure either. But I mean, I don't know about the gender differentiation. It feels a little bit antagonistic to me. I mean, to maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just a weird guy or something. But
It's
but I
not
don't think guys that suddenly are easy to be successful. I feel really offended.
it's not really 100% thing. I mean, there's a degree more. And if you look at our society, men tend to get more support than women, especially in certain areas. I wrote for 38 years or so before I actually really got published. A little bit in the 80s, but I didn't know how to do it. One of it is also you start getting to know other poets, go to readings, meet other people, workshops or something like that, whatever works for you. And doing what we're doing right now, getting together Culturama, that's what Culturama is for,
And I loved what Shannon said about it. Hope that you're your favorite poet, but a lot of us, I mean, I'm a approval junkie. I need to hear that I'm good from other people,
Keep coming to these things.
I need it generally less so. Like Shannon said, I believed in my poetry, so it didn't matter. And publishing actually for me wasn't as important as the writing, because I just love the writing itself. I love the practice. I love the doing it and the thinking of it. But approval still is a factor. Yeah.
So quickly on the two things. One was Richard had a question in there. What's a chapbook? So maybe a definition. What's a chapbook? And also, what does invitation only mean? I don't even know what that means. Invitation only press. What does that mean?
Chapbook is generally, John may know a little bit more. I know, like with it's like 40 pages or less.
Something like that. In the UK, I believe it's called a pamphlet.
A pamphlet.
In America, it's chapbook, CHAPBOOK, one word.
It's a relatively new thing. I mean, some people had poetry books, 80 years ago that would now be considered chapbooks.
Yeah. I think even west or north of Boston is that size, which is from. Yeah.
And a chapbook also is a little bit easier to be thematic. I have 5 chapbooks, and I think all of them have some sort of theme to them, where my books do not. Yeah. Wow. Where my books, I think 1 or 2 of them have themes. Yeah.
Yeah, chapbooks are smaller. They don't usually have a spine. I would say less than 40 pages typically. Typically they are themed. You're writing to something, like it's just type of arc. We're talking about invitation only. Okay, so invitation only, I wouldn't say that a ton of small presses are invitation only. Thomas and I are, and I believe Bamboo Dart and Pelicanesis are as well. So it's because the relationship is so important. I have actually worked with people that I haven't met. I worked with a woman in Nebraska. You know, I just liked one of her poems so much. I went to her website. I saw she was recently at an MFA. I saw she had aspirations to teach, and I thought, hey, maybe she wants to publish a chapbook that'll help her be competitive when it comes to getting a professor job. I thought maybe. Anyway, you know, so I have worked with strangers, and it's I'm not against working with strangers at all, but yes, the relationship is critical. Like
So you
it,
say that you don't submit to an invitation only. It turns the relationship around. The editor submits to you.
Right.
yes, and like I think all of us, any of us, are actually probably open to people approaching us. Like if you heard about us, you know, through Culture Rama or something, or even our websites, if you shoot me an email, you know, and ask me, hey, are you open to talking? I think Mark Gibbons will say, hey, let's have a coffee, you know? Like, because we need to know, I know this is going to sound weird, and I've said this before, it's a little bit like dating. It really is. It's kind of intimate. And we need to know if we can work together, if we can put up with each other's, you know, the ways we are. So, yeah, that's why it becomes more of a, hey, it's not so much invite only as, hey, let's have a coffee and talk. Like, if you think about it a little more that way. I wouldn't say that's with every small press publisher. There's so many, you guys. Go on Twitter, you'll lose your mind. You can't even keep track of anything. There's so many.
That's
There's
why I
so
listen
many.
to readings, is because, you know, that's where I would hear somebody read, you know, like through, you know, a number of readings, I get to know that person, thinking, you know, I'd really love to publish you.
So that brings an interesting question. How that's always the best scenario to have, is that the publisher is chasing you as opposed to the other way around, right? So what's the best way to attract the attention of a publisher?
Well, I mean, be friendly, be open, be professional. I know professional can be a loaded word. You know, again, it's like going on a date. Just, you know, be positive and believe, as you can, believe in your work, have confidence in your work. If you can fake it till you make it on that point, that's okay too. But I mean, not every poet that I've published, am I in love with their work, like specifically, like does it specifically sing to me on a personal level? That would be impossible, I think. Like, you know, 'cause it's important to me. I want to publish a lot of voices. So, but yes, a poem that pulls you in, sure. And who's to say what that's gonna be? I mean, I've had poems that I wanted to sleep next to on my bedside table for 5 years, and then I wake up and I'm not in that life situation anymore that it spoke to, and the poem no longer speaks to me. So who's to say? But sure, a good poem is gonna go a long way.
I want to make sure I don't publish people who, you know, are my voice too.
Why is that?
Go ahead.
Why is that?
You know, I like my voice, you know. I've had this conversation with John about voice also. He tells me I do have a voice, but you know, I want everybody's they're not me, they're them. You know, they have their own vision, their own art, and I want their art to. So when I get a collection of poems too, I'm not going to, you know, criticize it or change it radically. You know, I just might want to make sure it's formatted nice, and you know, they don't say something grammatically bad unless they do it on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you know, Daniel brings up a point about there are people who just feel outside and excluded, right? And there's certainly gatekeeping in this world. Are there ways of helping? What I shouldn't say. What are the ways that we can help each other to do this sort of thing? What kind of advice do you have? Just like there are specific groups that like Kaveh Khanum helps people of color. There's several like that. But what if you don't feel like you really want to be a part of one of those places? What can you do for yourself to get that kind of?
You know, I think one of the first things that Shannon said, I won't go any further, but she said friendly. You know, don't make enemies. You know, some people can, you know, kind of are a jerk to somebody, and then that, you know, that gets around sometimes. You know, it's a small world.
I think, yeah, well, yeah, it's true. It's true. Try to be friendly. One thing you can do is read. I know that sounds so awful, like read, but yeah, read a lot. So if you're a poet, read other poets. I'm not saying you don't, but if you can, try to read poetry every day. Try to read from all kinds of different sources. Know what people are publishing, know how people are feeling, take the temperature, of things right now. Go to readings. I know. I haven't been to a reading in forever because I don't particularly care for Zoom. It makes me dizzy. So, but when we get back to normal, whatever that looks like, try to go to readings. That's huge. I miss readings. It's a massive part of my, me as a poet is going to readings. So if you guys like Zoom or whatever other interface, attend readings. What you're doing right now is exactly what you do. If you have the time and resources, take a class at a community college. If you have the time and resources, that's another thing you can do. If you have the time and resources, buy some poetry books. If you have a local bookstore or used bookstore, go down there, talk to the person who owns it. Local bookstore owners, you know how they are. They're totally dialed in and one way or another. You guys are already doing it. You're already doing that. As far as gatekeeping, yeah, I think we all feel that. I'm not gonna lie, there's definitely an LA poets and San Gabriel Valley poets and OC or a little bit of OC, and we do have it. There's a lot of intermixing though. I don't know that it's closed. I don't know that it's closed. I think it's just, be nice. It depends on your approach trying to get in.
It's generally not closed. I mean, I guess I'm considered a Long Beach poet because I live here.
Yes, Long Beach. I forgot Long Beach, and I went to school in Long Beach.
But a lot of people, especially through the university, if they consider themselves also Long Beach poets, even if it's somewhere else.
Also, if you have one or two people that when you write a new poem, that you send it to them and you say, hey, do you have a minute to look at this? You're gold. I mean, that is gold. Like, there is nothing. My son asked me the other day, he said, Mom, would you rather have $1 million or 1 million loyal friends? I said, I'll take 5 loyal friends and then we're talking. And then he said, well, if you had 1 million loyal friends, you get 1 million likes and 1 million reviews on all your stuff, and they would buy 1 million of your products. So Mom, I don't know what you're thinking. But anyway, the point is 4 loyal friends. And I'd be like, yes. So yeah, if you have 1 or 2 people that you can send your poem to after you've written it, whether or not they're a poet too, or they know how to critique or can, whatever, that's gold. That's everything. That's everything.
I think another answer to the question with Daniel is that you're here. That's how you're going to, people to get to know you. I mean, that's one reason why we do this. John, you've had us do a poetry panel or whatever, and people are there, and during that time, I've often pulled somebody aside and said, "Oh yeah, I want to publish you."
Yeah. The thing I miss most about Culturama is the bad pizza lunch. Because at those points, the people could talk to each other, and say, here's a manuscript I have, right? As you try to choke down the cheapest pizza I could find.
I met both Shannon and Rooney standing in line for the bad pizza a few years ago. It's everything, that bad pizza line.
And the meet the author sessions, Often we just go and hang out with Joe at one point and hope nobody else came, but then I'd be quiet if other people were there.
I gotta say,
the heartburn just to meet Stephanie.
Aruni has a question.
I just know more of a comment, but being based on my own personal experience, being a good literary citizen goes a long way. Like if you don't go to readings, don't go to workshops, don't buy other, I mean, I've bought books I haven't even read yet. I have a stack as high as my ceiling of other people's chapbooks. If your friend publishes a book, buy the freaking book, because you're going to publish a book, and who do you think is going to buy it? Who do you think is going to review it? Who's going to read it? Who's going to give it to their grandmother for Christmas? If somebody's reading at the local library, go applaud when they read a poem. Ask questions in their workshop. Ask questions on behalf of your friends in that workshop. I didn't even intend to start writing. I went to a reading to support another author who wasn't even a friend of mine. It was a friend of my husband. Met the person who ran that reading, and he is solely responsible for any writing career I ever have. And he gave me my first feature. Someone in attendance at that feature gave me my first publication, which led to my second feature, which led to other people asking, hey, and like, I was literally writing a poem because someone would ask me to feature. Like, I didn't have 100 poems to choose from. Like, I knew I had a date coming up and I was in a mad dash to try to write something for it. And like, I'm going to have my first book out in next year, but none of it would have happened if I didn't go to readings, didn't buy people's books. It's like, you can't just sit in a tower and write like Victor Hugo and suddenly be an undiscovered genius. That doesn't happen. That's not real.
Readings are inspirational.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to sit in my house and, drink tea with a cat and write poems and have people tell me that I'm brilliant, but nope. I like go and read terrible poems at tiny readings where 3 people come, but I give it my best shot. And like every once in a while, lightning strikes. But you can't be a good author without being a good friend to other authors.
I don't know how many times I've written a poem in a reading just because their readings inspired me so much, and I never tell you I've written that poem when I read it in the reading that day.
Yeah. If you want people to stroke your ego, and I need that as much as the next person, if not more so, you got to be out there telling other people how awesome they are. And, buying I made it at Kinko's and stapled it together on my mom's office equipment books. I mean, I lost count of how many times I've bought cheap sangria for somebody's readings or baked cupcakes for their readings and spent money I didn't have on buying somebody's chapbook, because that's what it takes. That's what it takes. If you want to get published, you best join the crowd.
Okay.
And get your hands dirty. Get your hands dirty and read like it's going out of style.
And in most cases, the audience is very appreciative. I don't remember one poet that we wanted to throw them out.
Yeah, people, I mean, you will find a lot, the more love you put out there, you get it back tenfold. You really do. Like, I would have never, Shannon was one of the first people who published a poem. We met at an event that neither one of us was running, and it was like love at first sight, and she introduced me to almost everyone else I know. So yeah, I'm so grateful, but I didn't start off as I'm not a hugely talented person. I just do the work.
Right.
That look.
Richard looks like he has a question.
Well, a comment, I guess, and then a question, just to follow up on the gender discussion that started earlier and Daniel's point. I after I retired, I wrote a book about crime. It was nonfiction. And I wrote and I researched and read. But 32 years in law enforcement made it easy for me to have that dialogue set up. I actually did my master's program on that same topic in 2011. So 2015, I had to self-publish through Infinity. I think that's the name of the publisher. And then I did a nonfiction one for young Latinos in the inner city with my sister. And that's where I started having problems because I sent out these letters to publishers, and I went to small publishers. I went to the niche small publishers that focused on Latino authors and Latino topics, and I didn't get any love. But my niece is a librarian of 20 some years in Frisco, and I showed it to her the manuscript. And the first thing she did was look at my proposed cover. And she says, Uncle, this is not for young adults, this is for adults. So who did this? I said, I did it. She goes, no, you're not, you have to speak to young adults. And so she says, you need to join a book club, you need to do this, you need to do that. And my point to you is that here's a young lady, 20, 30 years my younger, and she's telling me what I need to do, which I already knew as a professional. Gee, why didn't I think of that? Network with people that are actually writers. So I go to the local writing club, and I find it's only 4 or 5 blocks away, and they meet every month, and it's a well visited organization by a lot of members. And I started learning a lot, and I'm learning from who? Women. There's a lot of women that are in the clubs. So I don't know, when you spoke about women have it tough, I'm thinking, well, the women are the one that are guiding this. If I look at the screen right now, the majority of the people I'm looking at are female. So I'm looking at it in terms of, how do I get this book published? Who do I go to? Who do I need to know? What do I need to say? All this kind of stuff. I got 2 more books proposed, and I ended up creating my own publishing company because that was the only way I was going to get it published. I figured, okay, I'll just become an independent publisher, whatever that means. Somebody mentioned earlier about promotions. Well, marketing a book or marketing poetry for that matter, is a tremendously hard thing to do. I'm not looking for money. I'm looking for an audience where I can speak to the ideas that I'm trying to present. So I heard about this. I used to go to Mount SAC. That's why I knew about Mount SAC's cultural program. I thought, well, let me see if I can learn something here. I learned 2 things today, by the way. One thing about chap books. So I'll look at that, Shannon, and see if it's something that I can introduce to somebody else. And I have a friend who's a poet. I didn't know he was a poet, and I love his poetry. And I'm not a poetry lover, but I liked what he had to say. So I'm going to point him in your direction. So if he wants to do a chapbook, because he's got a collection of poetry that I think could be dynamic. So that's the one thing I learned. The other thing I learned was about, what did we say? What did they talk about? Publishers? Where the publisher is looking and reaching out to people. I think Thomas and Shannon mentioned that, you reach out to see if you can marry. Is it going to be a good marriage? And I've had 4 people already approach me. One wants to do a cookbook on French food, and the other one wants to do pictography kind of book and stuff. And I have no clue about how do I guide them. Where's the manuscript? They haven't written anything yet, so that gives me time. But I have to do more research now to be a publisher, and I don't want to be a publisher. I want to write. So enough said on those topics. But I'm enjoying what I'm hearing so far.
You bring you brought something up. You mentioned, you start sending stuff out. One of the hardest things to know is just where to send your fiction or your poetry, whatever it is that you're writing. And what helps is having somebody who's got some experience guiding you. We at Mount SAC are always happy to guide you. You don't see him right now, he's having computer problems, but Lloyd Aquino helps, and I will help. And you just reach out, we'll give you like an hour and just talk you through where you should send your stuff specifically. And there are other Mount SAC professors who would help with that as well too. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, reach out to somebody who is an experienced writer who you're comfortable with. Okay. Okay. So what other questions do we have about publishing? We've been going on the same track for a little while.
Sorry, John, to interrupt. I just want to say, sorry. He's tired. Yeah, thanks, Richard. I'm actually really interested in detective novels. So I don't know if you said your first one was fiction or nonfiction, but anyway, if you want to shoot your contact or your website, writer site in the chat, I'd appreciate following up on that and maybe some of the other things you talked about. Yeah. Okay, sorry, John, go ahead.
No, please. I just flashed back to like 7 years ago, and you gave me 5 Swedish detective novels, and
Oh, yes.
they're so beautiful, and I got so depressed. My God, the Swedes, you know, they're just like, oh, geez.
When you're ready, I got an Icelandic one for you.
Okay, okay. What other questions do we have? 2 publishers, no waiting. We can talk about, oh, I'm sorry, Kelsey.
No, sorry. Me or Kelsey? Kelsey was gonna talk.
I have a question. What is the difference between a chapbook and an anthology?
A chapbook, so I think John said in the UK they're called pamphlets. Typically chapbooks are they're smaller, so they're usually under 40 pages, and they typically have a cohesive theme of some kind. Typically, they don't have to. Yeah, chapbooks don't usually have a spine, like if you think of the books, you know, with the spine. Different trim sizes. I see, Connie. It depends on the publisher. I like a 5.5 by 8.5. That's my sweet spot, but I know that other publishers like plenty of sizes.
The chapbook is generally like, say, 1 or 2 writers isn't a group of people. Anthology is a collection of writers. So like my Redshift. Here's one of them. Here's my big one. You know, this was a number of different authors in this. So
Maybe distinguish then also what a poetry collection is. Like a full poetry collection.
yeah, like, and a full poetry collection is just basically more poems or more pages than
From a single author, though.
I would say about 80 pages, 80 poems, around that 60 to 80 would be a full length.
It could be more than one author too, but it's usually very, you know, we published 2 authors sometimes in a collection too. Done that a couple of times. They usually have some kind of a theme they're going or something like that. So yeah, size is a big difference. Usually it's not much more than 80 to 100, something like that.
Well, these are general guidelines too. Small press publishers are going to be probably more open to sizing and things like that. So it doesn't have to fit perfectly within a category. That's one of the beauties of small press publishing, is you can do things that are, you know, in between. So you don't have to, you know, stress too much about that. We're all super different. All of these publishers, we're all super different. So you really need to kind of, just like you're picking out a lit magazine to send your work to, you kind of need to see, you know, if they have a vibe that you like, and if it works with your vibe. So
Yeah, that's what it's good to go out and, you know, buy other people's work, different publishers, anthologies, etc. And it's like, well, I wouldn't fit with that person, or, you know, that group or whatever. Or if like, oh, I feel comfortable, I could write for that. And it could also expand your writing too. It's like you don't necessarily write the way that they expect, but maybe you can change it a little bit, grow in your writing. Here's a format that was different than most. She did she did a photograph that she did and wrote a little haiku or a tanka for it, and it folds out this way rather than like a regular book. So you can think different formats too.
I wonder if we could talk, and if you want me to explain how to do it, I can do that, but talk about the importance of the book review.
sorry, John, could you repeat that for me?
Oh, the importance of the book review.
I think Thomas and I might differ a little on this, and maybe with you. Okay, so I think there's reviews and book blurbs, right? They're
I'm
kind of
talking
different.
specifically about the reviews.
About book reviews. Yeah, I don't stress about book reviews or book blurbs. So I think people who write book reviews are angels, they're saints. So yeah, John, you're a total saint. I think you're amazing for the work that you have done in the last year on that front. I don't know. Do you guys buy books? I'm speaking to everybody. Do you guys buy books? Like if you've read a stellar review of it, I know we all go on Amazon or whatever and look at those reviews, but I'm talking about like the well thought, the kind that John does, the very thoughtful, like almost interpretive of the book. Is that something that sways you to buy books?
That's a good question. Lavina, I saw you have a reaction.
Well, I think sometimes it depends on how intelligent, who publishes that review, how intelligent it sounds. But I think to buy poetry books, it's hard to find those reviews. Because they're also in little magazines often, if they're small publications. So how do you find them? I mean, I read blurbs, or I don't know if you call it a review, on various publishers' sites when they talk about the content of the book, but you don't get much of an idea of what the book is until you buy it and read it. I've found, because I'll buy them based on that, but then I'm sometimes disappointed. And then something that I'm not sure about, I'm more likely to buy a book because somebody recommends it.
Well, okay, so you bring up a couple of points there. Like for the biggest one is, where do you find them? Well, your friends are gonna, when they write a review, they're gonna say, here's where it is. Good literary citizenship, spread the word, right? So that people start to understand, oh, that's where book reviews are. We can get, usually the kind of book reviews you're gonna read are done by the kind of magazines that publish that same sort of work. So you're right, it's difficult. There are websites like Cultural Daily that do it. Does Shark Reef do book reviews?
We don't at this point. We just, and although I would love to, we've taken a, I'm managing editor of this small online magazine. If you've got some fiction for me, send me something and I'll put my connection in the chat in a second. But one of the things we're trying to do, just because we're such a small shop, is we're doing with every issue we are reading, and it's we are reading and loving. And I really have been pressing my kind of colleagues to really talk about, again, small press stuff that that isn't necessarily reviewed in the New York Times, that people wouldn't know about otherwise. And that's really a space, I think, where we can make people aware of books that we care about. So that's kind of where we're at with that, John. Thanks for asking.
Also, now we're thinking about it in terms of sales. I'm thinking of it in terms of writers. If you want to get your name out there, you want to make connections, it's a really good way to make connections. Especially, if you're targeting certain group of presses. It's like, I really want to publish in Alaska. Well, maybe a good start is to review some of Connie's books, right, that she publishes for people, that kind of thing. And then you get to know it too. I personally like to do it mostly because I found that I wasn't reading deeply anymore. Like in high school and college, I more or less memorized those books because I read them so deeply. And like I noticed I'm just kind of zipping through books now. And so this helps me to get to that space as well, doing a really good review.
As a publisher, I'd like to, I often send John a copy of a book I've just published. And partly is for him to review it, because I know he's been trying to review more, and I really want that poet to be presented. And that's the thing with my publishing, is I'm more interested in the poet than my press. I think if you could look at my website, I don't think my name's even on it. Shannon's talked to me about that. You should put your name on.
Well, people like to know who's on the masthead, so I don't blame them. But
I know. I'll probably get it there someday.
Yeah, Lavina.
I probably have never written a review because I don't feel like I know how to do it.
Hmm.
I wonder if anybody could talk about how one figured out, or do you just do you figure it out by doing it?
I could talk about this for 5 hours if you wanted to.
Oh,
I'm obsessed
another
with it.
conversation.
But I can also give you the 20-second discussion.
Hmm.
You know, part of the problem is when I'm looking, I used to live next to the person who ran the Kingsley Tufts Prize, just because I lived in Claremont. We shared a house, and every author in the country sent her 7 copies of their book, which means she had all these books, and she just started dumping them on me because she knew that I'd read some, I'd give some to my students. You know, it was great. But I found it was a really weird way of reading because I had no idea of what the book was about or how to sort of translate it, you know, how to understand it. So every once in a while you come across a neo-Nazi, you know, it's just bizarre, you know, you don't know what's coming up. And so that's generally what I'm trying to do is I'm in a review. I'm not giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'm talking about what's one way to understand this. And I'm very interested in spirituality. So what is the spirituality of the book is usually kind of my thing. What is that author trying to do? How can that author help us to grow? If I don't like a book, I won't review it because I don't like Moby Dick and I don't like Harry Potter. And I think those are both works of genius. Right? You know, they're just not books written for me. And not everyone has to be. What's that?
Shame on you.
Yeah, all right.
I don't like Moby Dick either.
Yeah. So I was so glad when Ahab died. Done. Yeah.
I think we have 2 copies of each Harry Potter.
Oh, really?
We would buy 2 so the family could all read it as quickly as possible.
Look, I can't stand that Finding Nemo movie that my students keep trying to get me to watch. It's just not for me, and it's okay. You know, it's for other people. Okay, so yeah, that's the quick thing, and then usually about 500 words to 1,000 words, maybe. Usually, I'm going to try to name authors that are similar, or it could be if you like this person, you're going to like that. Yeah, I do like Captain Nemo. As people are, it helps the Google Analytics. So if I see somebody who reminds me of Jack Kerouac, I'm going to say, well, this guy reminds me of Jack Kerouac, both to let you know who it is, but also to get eyes on that book because people are just randomly searching for Jack Kerouac all the time. Right? I don't know why I chose Jack Kerouac. He's not my favorite, but you know, big name, right?
I think also like with a review and a blurb is very short and it's got to be complimentary because they're not going to put it on the book. You know? If I asked you to write a blurb and you said I hate this book and this person, you know, you're not going to do that.
I saw that done once, and I think it was John Oliver.
Oh, really?
He put all of the people who hated him on the book, right? And as a way of saying, you know, if you don't like these people, you'll like me. Which is, you know.
Yeah, and a review. I think if you want to write reviews, you know, read reviews, and then write them. Just practice. You don't necessarily, you may not feel comfortable publishing them for a while, but you know, anytime you want to get better at something, practice.
John, it sounds like you need to do your class on writing reviews again.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you ever had one or thought about it.
I have, and it's on tape. It's on. I record. It's on tape. It's on the cultural. Meeting, but I'm happy to do it again. It's fine. I think that's a great thing. You have to think back to when you took English or freshman composition, because you have to write it that way, right? Introduction, thesis, topic, sentences, examples, right? Otherwise, it's something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Captain Nemo.
What other questions do people have? Could be about writing reviews. Actually, you know what's great too? Reviews, there are far too few people writing reviews, and many magazines want them, so they're really easy to publish. I've written 40 reviews this year. I have published 40 reviews this year. Right? Wow. It's just automatic. So yeah.
Can you share any knowledge around that you have around the financial aspect of small press publishing? How that looks like for the publishee and the publisher?
Mm. We're all different. So that's a good question. And it's, if that's something that's important to you, when you are researching your small presses, definitely go straight there. I am not interested in the financials at all. It's not because I'm in a privileged position where I can afford to not be interested in the financials, but the business side really distracts from the creative side for me, and the creative side is why I do it. So for me, like, when we're all different, any royalties that I get, which are very minor because I publish through Amazon, it's the least expensive way to be a publisher, and Amazon takes a giant chunk. So what I do is I pay my poets in contributors copies. I think can't remember if it's 25 or 30 or 20, but something like that. I go back and I always look to make sure when I'm communicating that I'm on point, but and then they can in turn sell those copies, for whatever they want, in whatever form they want. And I don't normally, I always promote that people buy from the author and not buy from Amazon. So whatever I make on Amazon, it's not very much. It goes right back into whatever else I'm doing with the press. But there are presses that, the higher you get, even in small presses, I'm sure that they do advances and royalties after a certain amount of copies sell. So there are presses that have the business model down. And there are ones like me that are just more about just putting creative work out there. And that's what I want to do. So I think Thomas is very similar to myself.
We're very compatible with that. I had a lot better paying job until, I retired, but so I could afford, to not worry about whether I was making money or spending money. I think the anthology was always in the red, but
yeah, anthologies typically. Yeah.
And the bigger the anthology was, the worse it was. So one time when I did an invite one, I had somebody else editing it. I didn't rein the person in. So it got pretty big. So you spend a lot of money sending out copies to authors. I do the same thing where if we sell on Amazon, I give them 25%, but I try to do it in books rather than money. If they want money, that's fine. They can have the money. But I figure that they can make more money by selling the books, unless they're selling a lot of books on Amazon. I think I have one author that I'll owe him some money by the end of the year. But he's sold pretty good. So I think they'll make more money if they sell that book rather than the money that I give them. So if they're not very good at selling the books.
Yeah, it's really small. I like to keep my books super affordable. I don't like to price them above $7. And I think maybe the royalty is like close to $2, maybe. And, since I hope that the poet sells their copies, really nobody's really buying the Amazon copies. And I also don't want the poet to kind of see that no one's buying the copies and have them feel bad. It's more like sell your books. I have one poet, she sells her copies through Etsy or Etsy, however you pronounce that. So, there's all kinds of different things. I have poets that have 15,000 Twitter followers and they've sold like 10 copies like on Amazon, so it's wild. The whole financial and the marketing aspect is wild. It's the Wild West. So research definitely the financial model if that's something that's important to you.
That like Red Hen, they have the staff, and they have people that have different roles just for marketing the book and something like that. And I'm imagining they're making money, but you have to work at it to make the money.
Yeah, they're paying their staff. They're making a living doing that. So yeah, a lot of people make that money by talking. Brendan Constantine says he makes a living at talking about having written, rather than like he's not making his money with the book sales, which is difficult. If you're talking about pure poetry, right? That's a different skill. That's a different desire altogether to be the the person who does the readings, and he's very good at readings. So which is why he makes that kind of money.
Yeah. So some people are better at being a poet rather than actually writing. So they may have a book or two and they're just really good at promoting themselves. And God bless them. Hopefully they promote poetry too, which is exciting.
Well, okay, so this gets back to the idea that it's hard to sell your own book. It's a lot easier to sell somebody else's book, right? And if you can form community where you're doing that, that's a good idea. So Arini.
As far as selling books, I've bought a lot of books by people I had no idea who they were, just because I liked the person. Like I've gone to a reading and heard somebody read a couple poems and think, I like you. I would read more of this. But it seems like they're selling themselves, not the book.
Right.
So I think it's to a lot of people's advantage to like book themselves in different reading series or at the public library or Zoom readings. Like I think a lot of books move that way because you're more invested because you've met the person.
Yeah, there
kind of met them.
Jump in and say something, Aruni. I think that's I love what you just said, that I like you, because it reminds me of being in this reading where I was far and away the least. I was like so beyond unfamous compared. Kim Dower was like the headliner, and then there were these other people, and then there was me. And these two women came up to me after the reading and said, I came to hear Kim Dower, but I like you. And the friend said, I like you too. And they bought like 6 books. And it was like,
wow,
great.
Okay, so I want to add something to this though. If you don't like doing readings, you're not going to do it well. It's not the only way of doing it. Like if you're shy, or, whatever, it's okay. You don't have to do it in this way. Just find alternative methods of getting your thing out there. For a lot of people, that means writing, and like joining in blogs, that sort of thing. Writing for other people's blogs, right? Blog writers are always looking for content because it's really hard to do. If you're going to create your own blog, have it be about anything but you being a writer, right? Because that have it be about the subject of what you're writing. So like if Richard were to like write a blog about being a police officer in Los Angeles, yeah, I'd be interested in that. But like saying this is what it's like to be a writer, well, Stephen King does that too, and like it's more people are going to put their eyes on Stephen King's blog for that, The weirder, the more interesting you get, the better. The more niche you can get with that. So I wrote for a lot of people's blogs when I came out with my Frastic work on Pomona arts, and so I'd walk around and look at the outside and inside arts, and that helped to sell a lot of books. So
it reminds me, I'm a blogger too, and I wrote a blog, or I'm writing a blog called "How to Be Successful at Failing in Writing." So there, I'm almost there.
The world's best blogger, as far as I'm concerned, is Stephanie's husband, who's had 2 very successful blogs. Like, I don't know, what that baseball, how many followers do you have in that baseball one?
Gosh, John, I forgot all about the baseball blog. Yeah, my husband is a genius, but he gets bored, like many genius, very, very quickly. So he does these things, and just as they're beginning to get successful, he's like, "Yeah, I don't care about that. I'm going to do something else." So, but the baseball blog was on the verge of getting big, and then he was like, "No, I don't care about that. I'm going to talk about Jewish Christian dialogue now." So that's, and now he's talking about EVs. But yeah, you're right. I'd forgotten about the baseball thing. That was almost like huge.
Yeah. Well, I followed the Christian Jewish dialogue thing, well, religiously. And because, it spoke to spirituality and different approaches. I then went out and I didn't really know him. I bought his book, because before I knew you, but I didn't know him yet. I bought his book because of that. So that's back to your point, Kelsey. If you don't, I mean, these going out and meeting people is great, but if you in a place where you can't do that, this is the other way of doing it as well, you know.
I think it's in the thought of, talking about the writer who doesn't like presenting. That's me, and so I just had to kind of get out of myself to a certain degree. Like I said, it was 38 years of writing before I actually got serious into publishing. I started going to a reading. I went to the Tibot Bach reading for 6 months and sat in the back corner. It was nice reading because it was dark most of the time. I could hide back there. And then when I started reading my poems, which were generally short and untitled, I read 3 right in a row, and they thought that was a strange poem. And whenever I've had to do a feature or something like that, I wanted to throw up before I do it. So, as much as I was uncomfortable with doing it, it really, I'm just glad that I did it.
Yeah.
So it's talking from that perspective. John's an extrovert, and I'm the introvert, and people tell me, you were shy, you were very good at that. Took a little while to get that response, but
yeah, it's easy for me. I've never felt nervous on a stage or looking into people's eyes, but I know that I'm unusual in that. All right, so I'm guessing it takes a lot of work. Great. What other kind of questions do we have? Or would you like to expand on anything we've talked about? Okay. What are there any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave with people?
Shannon?
No, I've been musing on the gender thing. I know we need to get back into that sticky stuff, and we only have a few minutes anyway. So no, I was just thinking about women and saying, I don't know that women are the main consumers and the main, and when I say women, I'm meaning trans women and also non-binary groups. They're the ones who are like, we're here. Like, I think, guys, when you're looking around and you're seeing women, it's because we're more communal, and it's not a dig on men. We're conditioned to be so, and I think it's a good thing and worth celebrating that we're more communal typically, and show up for people. I know men are more complicated, but hashtag not all men, but I don't know. Just saying, I'm still thinking about it. I'm gonna think about it for a while, actually. It's a good point.
I think that's one reason why I didn't want to be just a publisher of women, but so I opened it up to guys also. And there's definitely a good group of men, who I publish or who I know who need that same support. Some people are very good at, most people aren't that good at, being, promoting their own selves, and those are the people I wanted to reach out to. Or if just like, who is it, like Shannon, like George, who's just a wonderful writer, but he just hadn't.
Yeah, George is tops.
As I saw him in one of these sessions in Colorama, I said, George, come here. I'm going to publish you. And I was very, very happy to do so.
Oh yeah, when George came to me, I was ecstatic, it was amazing.
Who's this? George who?
George Hammonds.
Hammonds.
Yeah, he's amazing. His work is amazing. Highly recommend. I'll put his name in here. He doesn't have a website because he's just not that guy. Yeah, there you go.
That's the one that I publish for his. That's my. I don't do the staple and fold anymore, but they're also on Amazon too.
Okay, great. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all right.
I was just going to end it, so please, if you have more to say.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. We'll probably stick around after we turn off the record button if you want to ask personal questions. And up next, we have Michelson Knapp talking about what Native authors you should be reading. Talk about good literary citizenship. He's going to open us up to these authors we might not have seen before. So, all right. Thank you so much.